And good afternoon, everybody. We welcome to the Southwest IAEE Lunch and Learn. We appreciate you joining us. We are doing this one a little bit different than the last one, so please have some patience if it takes me a little while to bounce around with things. But today we have a great group to talk about and talk to. First, my name is Russ Callahan. I am the incoming, or I'm actually the current chair of Southwest IAEE. Thank you again for being here. And I also want to take the time to thank our current annual sponsors, both GES and Visit Anaheim. It is very appreciated what you are doing and being there to sponsor us during these very interesting times we're all going through together. We have some thought leaders today, and let me introduce them real quick. We have Mark Fissell. He's with Forrester, Donny Neufus with Brightline Interactive, and Jim Kelley with Fern. The subject today, for those of you who are trying to remember what the subject actually was, is digital events and how we can bridge the gap between digital and face-to-face. So we are going to bounce through and cover as much as we can given the time frame. Feel free to utilize the chat system if you have questions, and we will call on you and have you unmute and actually ask the question so we get a little interactivity on this bad boy. I do want to give a special thanks to Fern. They are the chapter education sponsor for IAEE. Jim, thank you, and to you and Aaron and everybody for everything you're doing to help make sure we're able to continue our education during this period of time. So,
happy to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Kelley. So let's start this bad boy out. I think the appropriate place to start with this is Donnie. Donnie, if you want to jump on in here and give us a little bit of your background and just kind of give us the information you and I were talking about the other day on what digital really means to us and to the event space.
Yeah, well, thank you, Russell, for inviting me. I'm so grateful to be here with the chapter. And again, thank you, Fern and Jim, for supporting this. I think this is a really important topic, especially right now. So name's Donny Neufus. My background is actually in the streaming and technology industry. I actually started out in the music industry when we were first streaming audio online. And from there, fell into the events industry where I worked for a company called Sonic Foundry, which we did basically streaming and content capture for creating hybrid and virtual events. And from there have gone on to work in the technology space. Currently, I work at a company right now called Brightline Interactive, where we are a company that builds immersive and virtual environments. We have two sides of our house. One's for military and government, where we actually build training for military and government in VR and AR, large platforms for them and law enforcement. And then another side of our house, which is brands and events, where we do large virtual events for Super Bowl and for large Fortune 100 brands where they're activating. So in the role that I'm in and what I'm doing, I run the brand side of the house. I run kind of our enterprise and our virtual events initiatives. And basically what we're doing is we were already doing this translation before the current scenario, where we were kind of ushering people into what is digital, what is virtual, and helping them along with what this transition is. Obviously, after the pandemic, you know, things got really intense on our end with the amount of our clients coming to us with a wide variety of different asks and requests. And basically what we've been doing at Brightline for the last almost 3 months now is allowing a lot of organizations to pivot and to pivot very quickly, having to pivot very quickly. And what does that mean? What does digital mean? What does virtual events mean? So what I will say is that the knee gut reaction that people are having is we need to take all of these sessions and these speakers and all this stuff, and we have to cram them into a Zoom, or we have to put them in a virtual event platform, and we have to basically translate what we did at the live event and do that virtual. And the truth of the matter is that just doesn't translate. It just doesn't work that way. And I think what happened, not just in the events industry, but across education, across corporate comms, everybody had these tools, but when the situation presented themselves where they had to use it, they may have had the tools, but they didn't necessarily know how to use the tools or how to translate what's this means of communication, right? So what we've been finding is a lot of initial people have been coming to us saying we need to do a virtual event. And that's like somebody walking up to you and saying we need to do sports. What does that mean exactly? And everybody has a different use case. A lot of what we saw when this started happening is suddenly there was all these technology companies that were sprouting out of nowhere, providing virtual event solutions, right? And the truth of the matter is that there's not a one size fits all, right? Also, generally starting with the technology is the wrong place to start. Because what you will find is that a lot of these technologies out there were built for certain use cases and not necessarily are conducive to everybody's scenario as far as what type of events they're holding and they're running. And also not necessarily what they're trying to get accomplished, right? So there's just been a lot of education that's had to happen very quickly, a lot of discovery that's kind of had to happen very quickly. One thing I will say that people initially came to us and said was we need to do everything live. And the truth of the matter is that in the events industry, live events, it has the word live, we do everything live there. But that doesn't necessarily translate to virtual. That's not really how virtual works. A great example of this is if any of you or your kids have watched American Idol, all of that is a very well-produced show that seems seamless and seems like it's all happening live. The truth of the matter is that's all being recorded and then played back as if it is live. So what a lot of organizations were finding when they're all trying to go live is that it's very costly. You have to have a person who is project managing every single one of them, a streaming tech. It just gets very unruly very quickly. And so a lot of what we've had to do is to try to reevaluate what really has to be live and what is something that somebody can watch, what we call simulated live, where it appears to be live, we can still have people talking to each other, but it doesn't necessarily have to be done on the spot there. So this whole question of live or on demand. The second part is making sure you're using the right tool for the right job. So a lot of people all jumped on Zoom, and I know a lot of us have Zoom fatigue. But the truth of the matter is Zoom is a very specific tool made for a very specific thing, which is it's meant for a group of people to see each other, collaborate, and all talk to each other. It's great for a size crowd like this, but put 3,000 people on it doesn't work. So a lot of people were getting confused on what was the right tool. Do I use Zoom? Do I use YouTube Live? Do I use Facebook? You know, what are all the different things, the 6Connects and Trado, all these platforms. And so it can get really daunting. And so a lot of what we've been trying to do from the technology side is have a discussion with the event planners, with the stakeholders, and really kind of boil down the essence of what it is they're actually trying to do. And once we understand what it is they're trying to do, who they're trying to communicate to, what are the perimeters around that, then we back our way into the appropriate technology. We have a saying at our company that technology done well, the technology disappears and it leaves behind the message. So you shouldn't even notice the technology. You should remember the content that's distributed. So that being said, there is a lot of different technologies out there. And when I started on the virtual events industry, basically everybody was streaming. But now with augmented reality, virtual reality, all the different types of platforms, there's a lot more tools in the toolkit. And all of these tools where before this all happened, a lot of people were saying, well, that's nice, but that's not necessarily something we need to address now. Now people are having to address it. Now people are trying to have a look at these technologies, and no longer is it a nice to have, it's a need to have. So one of the things that is also happening at the same time is there's a rapid escalation of some of these technologies that maybe weren't really thought of as something necessary for the events industry that are now being taken very seriously. And one of those things I would say is virtual and augmented reality. So we work with a lot of organizations that do very specific training, and generally they do that training in person. And now that that training has disappeared and the ability for people to do it in person, they've been using these new technologies that at first they were a little hesitant to use. But one of the things that people are finding is great efficiency in these new learning platforms. So for instance, we work with an association that basically deals in the petrochemical industry. And they had a real hard challenge where there's a very specific process for lighting these huge burners that they have at oil refineries. And these burners are 180 steps in order to do them. So the way that they traditionally would do this was reading course material and then working through the in-person events where they would, train people through the steps and all that. Well, when that disappears, that becomes incredibly difficult for them to do. So they actually turned to virtual, and we actually built a learning platform for them to actually take somebody in virtual reality through all these steps. So the book is about 200 pages thick. It generally takes them about 3 weeks to learn everything, memorize it, go through everything, show up for the assessment, and then it takes a week for it to get back. So we're talking about a month for this to happen. When we built this training module for them, we took all of that course material, those 200 pages, and we condensed it down. We represented all of it visually, right, in a virtual reality simulation. Now, after doing the simulation, it takes for the assessment, for the learning, the assessment and the grading, it takes about 27 minutes. So we took a month of time and we condensed it to 27 minutes with greater comprehension and higher test scores. So what's happening now is because we've been forced to pivot in these technologies, we're being forced to use them, but then what's happening is everybody's starting to arrive at the station and realize, wow, this is something that is actually pretty powerful and something that we can use in perpetuity. But the only way that this happens is that we have a real frank and honest discussion about what it is you're trying to do, and then we figure out the best way to get you there.
Well, Donnie,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to say that's actually a really good jump off point to bring Mark in. Yep. Because this really is about what you were saying is making sure we have the proper tools and are asking the right questions. Now, for those of you who don't know Mark is actually a show organizer that has taken digital and shown true success with it. And so, Mark, can you kind of detail for everybody who you are, what it is you do, your company, and everything, and then how did you grab this monster that is digital, bring it to your live event, save your live event in the digital world? I think everybody in the audience is going to be very interested in your story.
Sure. Thanks, Russ. And likewise, thanks for having me call. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Fissell. I run events program management for Forrester Research. In my capacity, I'm responsible for the execution of our on-site content agenda and attendee and sponsor experiences for Forrester. We are an independent show organizer in line with other businesses that include research and consulting for business to business, business to consumer, and technology professionals. And as Russ just mentioned, we had COVID hits, and we had our largest program in our calendar portfolio happening roughly 8 weeks after the sort of major impacts of office shutdowns, travel restrictions, venue shutdowns, all that type of stuff. And we were faced with like many of you on the organizer side, faced with the sort of immediate challenge of what are we going to do here? And thankfully, with thoughtful leadership, courageous leadership from our side, and some institutional experience in running various formats of digital, we made the quick decision to execute the program digitally. Now, what did we do and how did we do that? For us, and many of our competitors, many other business-to-business and business-consumer conferences were making quick decisions, particularly in March, late February, early March, to cancel events, to postpone them, to kick the can down the road, so to speak. We have frequent and meaningful interaction with our clients, with our attendees, with our sponsors. And we were getting immediate feedback of, despite the tumult of COVID-19, the importance to still get educated, for lack of a better term, particularly from our attendee base. That doesn't disappear. A matter of fact, for our audience, the need to get timely, relevant content, as Donnie had said, really, multiplied as a result of COVID and the disruption that we were seeing. So having that touch point with our attendees, what we immediately focused on was, first and foremost, identifying our unique value propositions. What are the things as a show organizer that our attendees can only get from us? Or if they can get them elsewhere, what do they rely upon us for, more so than they might other places that they seek that information? That helps, that helped us sort of set some of the fear and unknown aside and focus really on who are our attendees, who are our sponsors, and what can they only get from us. We happen to be blessed with a business model where our attendees can only get content from Forrester analysts. So there is some strong, unique value proposition there. But focusing on the unique value propositions, we really identified 4 key areas where attendees look to Forrester events for expertise, connection, experiences that they maybe cannot get elsewhere. Identifying those 4 value propositions then allowed us to do the exercise of, to Donnie's point, can any of this translate to digital? What can we deliver in a digital environment that our attendees are used to getting at in-person events, whether it's networking experiences, it's content, it's sessions, it's an exhibit show floor, and really narrowing down the focus of what does a digital experience look like. We used internal expertise to identify some of that. I've had experience in my 20-year event career executing online events in various forms, whether it's hybrid or it's a pure, basic webinar or it's something more complex. But we also tapped into other colleagues throughout the organization and then reached out to our partner network of suppliers and vendor partners, both technology and digital first, and our traditional providers, decorators, like we noticed the GES supports your chapter. And we started to gauge what are the digital experiences and technologies and tools and platforms that could help us execute on the 4 key things that we identified we needed to be able to provide for our attendees, whether in person or online. That exercise happened really quick. Really over the course of less than a business week, we did as much due diligence as we could. And we made the decision to go forward with a full virtual event. And as Donnie mentioned, the term virtual means different things to different people. For us, it was more of an online event, not a true augmented reality or true virtual reality experience, but a comprehensive digital experience that would allow us to provide those 4 key value propositions for our attendees and sponsors. And in 8 short weeks, I think Donnie or Russ used the word pivot. We pivoted our entire business operation from a relatively large group of people who's used to executing in-person events with decorator partners, with production provider partners, with venue partners. And we gave those personnel the clearest guidance possible with very tight project plans that I sort of led the development of to pivot them from executing an in-person event to an online event. less than optimal development time. Typically, you'd want to be, 16 weeks plus in developing an online experience. But that said, the entire organization was motivated behind it. We had very clear parameters for what we were trying to execute. We had very clear objectives of what a digital experience looked like versus an in-person experience. And we had partners, both our traditional production partner, we had some agency support, and we made eyes wide open decisions on what were the trade-offs that we were not going to try to do in a digital environment versus what we were going to execute online. And I'm happy to report that on May 4th through 7th, we executed a very comprehensive 230 plus sessions, about 50 exhibitors, 3,000 plus attendees online for our company's Summit 2020 program. And we not only did we do the quick execution of the actual translation from in-person to online, but we also pioneered on business models that we hadn't seen out there yet. Not many online events are charging attendees and charging sponsors, and we had a fully monetized business model. Of course, we had the confidence that it would work because we knew our attendees and sponsors needed us to help them convene. So we did have that benefit. But we made the pivot to virtual or online, as the case may be, in that 8-week time frame, and to a great degree of success, particularly for our internal KPIs. So very long-winded sort of case study answer for the success that we saw. But the last thing I'll say, Russ, before I turn it back to you is, all of us on the show organizer side are in this position of having to react one way or another. Whether we've had digital as a part of our event experiences and attendee experiences previously or not, the complete disruption and shutdown of our in-person events over the last three months or so has put us all in this position. The one thing that when I talk to all my colleagues who are event planners or show organizers, the one thing that I'm seeing is separating sort of the leaders in this very early stage of this from the followers is just that word courage, and having the courage to execute something that your attendees and sponsors have come to expect from you. There's no magic bullet in this environment that we're in. And so I think it's actually just keeping an eye on, do we have a unique value that our constituents have come to rely on us for? And will they miss it if we don't provide a program for them? And if the answer is yes, then if you're on the sidelines, I encourage you to get off the sidelines and provide some value for your clients. They need it just as much as we need to be developing our expertise for building online events.
Well, Mark, thank you very much. It's refreshing to know that somebody's been able to make the pivot and succeed with it and actually make money on it as well. So I'm sure that's on a lot of show organizers' minds at this point. So Jim, how do you see the service side being able to help move this ball forward? And what do you see as some of the challenges for all of us moving forward?
Yeah, well, again, thank everyone for taking time out of their day to spend some time with us. I appreciate being here and kind of sharing the stage with Russ, Donnie, and Mark. And I think one of the things you'll see is, we have slightly different perspectives on this. I've come from a live event side and really focus purely on the aspect of face-to-face events. And I think the title of this session could not be more on point with the use of the word bridge. Digital events, as we are now seeing them, are being utilized in the delivery of content and networking, are a bridge until we can get back to normal. And yes, I do believe as an industry we will get back to normal. Everyone on this call needs us to. It's my belief that a digital-only business model was not sustainable for any of us including the digital solutions providers. They were geared to support a live event industry. And I think it's important to understand that for the purposes of clarity, I'm defining normal as getting back to a time when face-to-face events are executed in a manner that allow them to deliver as the dominant and driving force around business, commerce, and marketing. History has shown that face-to-face commerce has value and really can't be duplicated and replaced over time for a sustained period of time. Again, think of that word bridge. We are in a temporary state right now. And with that said, some of the logistical aspects are certainly going to be different. Remember after 9/11 when we started flying again and the security measures seemed odd and clunky, now we consider them routine. The same type of changes are going to occur in a face-to-face environment, absolutely. But in many cases, the changes will most likely add levels of efficiencies and force organizations to make changes they were otherwise on the fence with. I mean, both Donnie and Mark alluded to the fact that a lot of organizations were thinking about some type of digital solution, be it hybrid or to support learning. And now they were kind of, their hand was forced, right? It quickly got moved to the top of the list. I feel the same way about digital events, right? They're certainly getting a lot more attention now. And I've long believed that digital was a great way to bridge the live experience for those that were not able to attend the live event, to better prepare attendees before they attend the event, and to extend the experience post-event. I've been doing this a while. We won't talk about how many years. You can go to my LinkedIn profile and see how long. I just will say at one point, Donnie and I did work together. And when Donnie and I worked together, I had hair and none of it was gray. So we'll just leave that there. But, for years, it's actually pained me to see many of my clients put the energy and effort into an incredible experience that they would work months on, if not years. And then it would happen over a period of 72 to 96 hours. And then for many, that event precipitously ended, in some cases literally died when the exhibit hall closed on the last day. All that energy and excitement just went away. And I always ask myself, why? Digital is a fantastic way to amplify, augment, and accelerate the face-to-face experience. We know that. We see examples of that all the time outside of our industry. I'm a huge fan of TED and TED conferences. I listen to at least one session a day for my own self-development. I follow probably 4 or 5 of their podcast channels. And when I was traveling, on a regular basis, TED videos were my go-to on flights. Yet I've never been to a TED conference, in large part because I would most likely lower the median IQ. It typically occurs during an incredibly busy time for me, April, right? Which we know is traditionally a live event. And then I can't afford it, but that's another story. However, I know that the aura and energy around the live experience augments the quality of the content I watch digitally. It amplifies the networking experience and it accelerates learning. TED digital content would not be what it is without the face-to-face component. It just wouldn't have the same energy and excitement and that growth. As we cross the bridge back to normal, I'm excited about the thought of digital being used for its original purpose, which is, and that intent to complement the live experience, to expand the reach of the live event, and allow those who, for whatever reason, could not attend the live event not to be left out of the pool, and for those attending the live event to continue to build on the networking, learning, and commerce opportunities that exist on the, and began on the exhibit floor or in the session room. Many show organizers, associations have stakeholders that are vested in their events, but for some reason can't attend. It just, there might be a conflict, but that doesn't mean the content isn't good. That doesn't mean the networking isn't good. And I do think there's a place for that, but it's never going to replace the live event and the live event experience. And, you know, I think there's a place for us both to coexist, but I think, again, we will get back to normal where face-to-face is taking first chair in all of this.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jim. I think it's good points. Mark, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say I totally agree with Jim that look, I've been in the in-person events business for 20 years. I'm sure there's some people on this call with a much longer tenure than that. And for 20 years, I've been in product development and product management roles. And for 20 years, we've been trying to figure out what the kind of, you know, how to extend the 365 event experience. And when some of the virtual platform providers were emerging 10 years ago or so, you know, some of us were wondering, is this a threat to the in-person events business? And ultimately, there's some organic value that I don't think can be replaced by any other kind of channel. That said, none of us has been where we're at today. And none of us has been in an environment where global pandemics are grinding our entire industry and a lot of the surrounding industries to a complete halt. And where I think the most important bridge for right now, in my opinion, is maintaining and sustaining partnerships with our in-person event providers, even if they are even if they're largely shut down right now. There's a lot of big providers out there that have, you know, furloughed, you know, multitudes of their workforce and all that type of stuff. But we're all going to have to bridge the solutions together, whether it's 6, 12, 18, 24 months. I'm not a prognosticator, but to Jim's point, what we're working on now is, what do those scenarios look like? Ultimately, how do we get back to in-person events? How do we supplement those events with meaningful experiences for people who cannot attend under travel restrictions or still in pandemic regions, all that good stuff. And I think the most important thing that we're seeing, you know, right now with our partners, with our sponsors is a willingness to roll up their sleeves and collaborate on, you know, various, you know, on kicking the tires on various business models and solutions that as a show organizer I've never seen before. And it's refreshing, you know, that we're all sort of huddled together around the fire, trying to work on collective opportunity.
And Mark, I think one of the key things that you touched on that I think is really relevant at this time is you talked about that at your organization, you felt like you had something of value to offer that people still wanted. And I think that's true for any organization, right? If you have value, you know, during this time, you still need to find a way to stay relevant. And now, conversely, right, I think there is going to be some organizations and some events that realize, or it's going to come to light, that they didn't have the value in the marketplace, and what they were offering was something that was nice to have versus needed and mandatory to have for their business to grow. And I think that's something that is going to also come to light, right? And there might be some right sizing of the industry, but again, I think it's that complement of the services and solutions that you're offering your stakeholders, be they attendees or for-profit, you know, people that are coming to the event.
Yep.
Great. Hey, Mark, we've got we got a question for you here.
Yep.
And if you can, obviously, I don't want you to, you know, divulge any trade secrets and things that are specific to your organization. That would be a competitive disadvantage to you. But Lori Jenks is asking, how did you monetize your online event? And can you briefly describe the areas that generated revenue? And which online partner which online provider did you partner with?
Yep. Thanks for the question, Lori. We monetize both on the attendee side and the sponsor side of the event. Now, a part of our what benefited us for this particular event and where it fell on the calendar, it was beginning of May, we ran the online event. As I mentioned, about 8 weeks prior, we made the decision to pivot to virtual. Well, 8 weeks out from an event, we already had a pretty decent coffer of attendee tickets and sponsorships sold. So we were starting from a place where we had already monetized, obviously, the in-person event. But where we made the eyes wide open decision was, while other events were canceling and either retaining the money and offering credits for 2021 or when they could run the in-person event, we had a very clear offer to our registered attendees and to our sponsors of what we were going to do. We were going to refund their money in entirety, and they would have to pay to sponsor the event, or we would offer them a credit for a future event, their choice. But we started from a place of working more, I think, in partnership and more respectfully with the people who had invested in us, both attendees and sponsors. We lost, some sponsors, we lost some attendees, but then we sold a whole bunch of tickets and a whole bunch of sponsorship, net new sponsorship in the digital. And again, I think for us, we happen to be in a unique, and we had various sponsorship packages, various add-on supplemental sponsorships, and we did well with all of that stuff. I think my organization happens to be in a pretty unique position, or a strong position, of having a vested attendee base who relies on us for information and insight, and relies on the connections that we can help provide them with sponsors. So we do have that unique value proposition that Jim was talking about, and I do think there will be some right sizing for organizations that might not. But we were also one of the first ones out in the market having done this. And I think the longer the disruption in our industry goes, the more organizers will roll out their own paid ticket and paid sponsorship models in online events. Because at the end of the day, attendees still need to be connected with one another, and buyers and sellers, and sellers still need to be connected with buyers. And if they can't do so in an in-person, they're going to, the opportunities for them to invest in online options for doing that will continue to grow. In terms of the specifics of the platform, that, because of the company that I work for, I'm not allowed to divulge. We maintain objectivity in marketing technologies and advertising technologies. So unfortunately, I can't divulge it, Lori. But that said, as Donnie had mentioned, there are a myriad options available, from the most sort of platform in a box solutions to one-off solutions that can serve your webinar needs, and another solution that can serve your collaboration and chat and connect and networking needs. And that's the place where I do encourage those of you that have partners that you've worked with in production, or logistics and decorator partners, or pure creative agencies. Many of them are developing or already have existing relationships with short lists of tools and technologies that might work best for you. And I'm seeing another question here in terms of sponsorship packages. We started with 2 base packages, an entry-level investment that had a level of digital entitlement to it, and a more significant level investment that had content and main stage presentation opportunity to it. Again, this is where I think I encourage those of you guys who are looking at how do you monetize on the sponsor side. Look at your existing sponsor base. What do they rely on you for in the shows that you organize for them? Do those deliverables from your packages translate to increased interaction or lead retrieval opportunity if you're a lead gen show? If those things translate to unique value propositions for you, then you can focus your work on, how do I deliver this digitally? And it makes it an easier an easier process for you to build sponsorship packages, because you're going from a place of confidence of, I know my sponsors need this from me. I know my attendees expect this from my sponsors. And I have a good idea of these are the things I want to translate to digital. And then, as Donnie said, it makes it easier for you to reach out to a company like his, or to reach out to Jim and say, Jim, please help connect me with a couple of the producers in your network, to translate those things into digital experiences. In terms of pricing and things like that, how do you price those packages, et cetera? I can't, that really comes down to your audience, your model, your industry, the level of investment in an in-person versus a digital, and making clear best guess decisions, and then socializing them with your sponsor prospects on, hey, we had a package that was $50,000 for the in-person event. We're thinking this package is $20,000. How does that resonate with you? And, test and validate your ideas and assumptions with the people you're actually trying to sell to.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Hey,
Russell,
Donnie, I had a quick question for you that I wanted to throw at the digital guy, so to speak. So when we're looking at the other side of this, and we get to the point where we've reintegrated live events, we can all get together and give each other hugs like everybody's dying to do. How do we, or what would you say is the one thing, I know that's really putting you on the spot, but one real thing that we can take from the digital side and the things we're learning right now, the content, the 365, all of that, what's the one thing that we can make sure we give equal attention to during the live event that crosses into the digital world and makes this thing a little more seamless? Right now, it feels like here's your digital world and here's your analog world, and never the two shall meet. It's like the CD and the LP. So how do we bridge that gap and not use a cassette deck, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's a great misconception about digital, that it's an either or, right? And to Jim's point here about TED, a lot of the meeting planners we've talked with are like, well, we need in our virtual platform, we need to have polling, and we need to have chat, and we need to have all these things to engage attendee engagement, right? To see if we're engaging them. And the truth of the matter is, the most expensive, most sought after conference in the world gives everything away for free on demand on YouTube. And there's no chat, and there's none of those tools. Content is king. Content will always be king. It's the one truth between these two. And so what I think happens is that, virtual is not your live event. It's kind of like that best friend that could be family, but isn't family by blood. There's an ebb and flow. When the virtual event is going on, that's when you have discovery and excitement, and you have connection. You have all these things that are happening during that. But when the event is over, the digital version really is there to enhance what happened at the live, and it's there to accentuate the good, accentuate the great content, the great conversation, the aha moments, and continue that conversation throughout the year. It becomes a property in which people can re-engage with your brand throughout the year, only to drive more and more people to go to the eventual live event or events. So I think what's going to happen here, and how this is going to kind of play out, is right now a lot of people who have been doing live are now having to learn how to become online content marketing strategists, trying to learn how to enhance online content to add more fuel to the live event. If you look at Austin City Limits, the reason why Austin City Limits is so popular and the only way you get a ticket is through a lottery is because of this great platform, public television, that it had with it. And everybody knows it, but to try to get a ticket, it's almost impossible. And I think really that's where we're going to come here. It's like saying we're going to replace all live concerts with iTunes. That's not what it's for. What it's for is for distribution to people who haven't had access to music in the past. And what it does, it makes people who didn't have a chance before suddenly into rock stars, because now they have a platform. And now even more people come to their live event, to their concert. So I think we're learning how to use this tool in a way that's going to enhance, not replace, but accentuate. And I think really that's the place that we're kind of arriving to here.
Excellent. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Donnie. Hey, Mark, we've got another question for you. You're a popular guy. And this basically has to deal with the hybrid future events and the pricing that we currently do. And this is purely an opinion, and I'm sure Jim will have an opinion on this as well. But right now, generally shows are sold by the square meter and the, you know, our square foot pricing. And so what does this do as we start to have more of this virtual side, and especially in the pure virtual, where we're doing streaming and and for some reason we're being completely online as opposed to face to face. Does it become a advertising type of marketing structure, or how many looks you get, how many clicks you get, or where's the middle ground? What are we looking at in the future of pricing, do we think?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm definitely interested to hear Jim's opinion too. I think that in the future hybrid model, and I'm reading Erica's comment. Yeah, I think ultimately the bridge and the emerging model that's going to come for all of us as show organizers is going to be, you have to have a comprehensive hybrid event strategy, because again, I'm not, I guess I'm prognosticating while I'm saying I'm not a prognosticator, but I just don't see normalcy returning, you know, true normalcy returning for us in terms of travel restrictions and mass gatherings for quite some time, couple years probably. That's just my gut, uneducated guess. So in that model, this concept of our exhibitors, particularly if we are a square foot sort of drayage model, needing to be present and vibrant in an in-person environment, but also present and vibrant in a hybrid supplemental digital experience. That's where I think we've got time as show organizers and working with partners like Jim, working with partners like Donnie, who come from both sides of the in-person or come from both sides of the sort of event model experience. I think we've got the opportunity that's where we can be more creative with, you know, providing our traditional, you know, huge square footage footprint exhibitors with key reasons why that they need to maintain a large square footage, or key opportunities why, hey, you don't need to be as big square footage in person anymore, but we've got these great digital engagement opportunities for you to extend your reach both to the in-person and remote audiences. I know that's a sort of fluffy answer, but I think, you know, we're sort of over the initial shock and awe of this. I think, at least, you know, having been through roughly a quarter of trying to figure out what to do. Now, as we look forward, I think as show organizers, we're all just we have a great opportunity here, having had our hand forced a little bit, as Jim said, but we have a great opportunity to be more proactive and strategic with what our business models look like going forward, particularly in terms of show floors and exhibition side of our events. And the second piece that you asked was in purely virtual. Again, that is you know, if you know, the amount of education out there for show organizers right now about different online digital experiences and tools and technologies, I encourage all of you that are organizers to consume as much material as you can, both from, you know, obviously your chapter here and from any other source. The beauty of digital is every attendee and every sponsor has a comprehensive footprint. So really, you know, the value proposition of, hey, what's the data that I'm going to get out of this? What's my ROI as a sponsor? Virtual digital certainly provides, I think, in some cases, a much easier path to defining ROI for your sponsors and exhibitors than in person does. So leveraging some of that in a purely virtual model or in a hybrid model, you know, that can be a game changer for us in terms of finally getting that place of justifying your exhibitors' investments in your shows, because you're truly able to provide metrics and data that unless you had the deepest pockets at the in-person event, maybe you couldn't provide.
So
Yeah.
Russ, if I could jump in, I mean,
Absolutely.
ask a follow-up question about regional, which actually goes was actually part of my answer to the first question. So I do think that there is the potential, depending on the nature of your group, right, which is your attendees, as well as your exhibitor base, that you could see for some organizations a model that is more of an annual buy-in, which includes a present at the hybrid event, as well as these other live events. And that's where I think the regional part comes in. I do believe that for some organizations, their return to live events may be more regional in nature initially. You know, you're going to have some attendee bases that are much more comfortable driving, okay, in the short term. And maybe where they had said, I'll drive 3 hours, maybe they'll increase that to 5. And, you know, I do not think it's out of the question that you would see a model where an sponsoring organization, exhibiting company would make an annual commitment, and as part of that commitment, they get a package. Basically, they get to pick deliverables on the hybrid, but they also get to pick X number of square footage of exhibit space that they choose to activate in a given year. And let's assume that you might do 3 or 4 regional events. They may choose to only do 2 of those, and then they execute against that because either the timing's bad for them, right? Because now when you're going to regional, you're spreading out your timing and you're having more events. And then, or there might be a regional market that's not good for them, right? I mean, I think every industry has regional players, right? And so they might be in a medical distribution area that they're not strong in the Southeast, right? Because there's another competitor there. They may choose to opt out of that event, but do the other 3 events. So I think the organizations that can shift their model to one that is more flexible and dynamic as it relates to building out annual packages that encompass the hybrid as well as a combination of live events are going to be very successful, right? I mean, I know, you know, one of the things that we talk about, and I'll give Donnie the credit on this, it's replicate and relinquish, right? What can you replicate from your live event and move forward, and what do you have to get rid of? And I think that one of the things that we have to really kind of relinquish in some ways are our standard pricing models and how we deal with exhibitors, because they're going to have different needs. The value is you still have something to bring to them for the market, and you need to find a way to leverage that effectively. And I mean, not only are we hurting in our industry, but I think we just have to face the reality that a lot of industries across the US have been hurt economically, and they're going to be looking for ways to re-leverage their spend in their marketing dollars. And those companies that can adjust will do better.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Good points. That's why we have him here, this very thoughtful guy that we have. Well, I've known Jim for too long now, so I got to be very nice to him. So.
I can't believe you mentioned the LPs and cassettes. You're certainly showing your age.
Yeah, I kind of am. It's yeah, entirely too long doing this stuff. So gentlemen, really want to thank you for your participation. I think that it's a topic that is going to be hit over and over for the foreseeable future. And it's always great to have somebody who has had experience successfully with it, and then the experts in the industry as well. So thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. Reminder to everybody participating, you do get CEM credit for this if that's one of the things that you're after. but you only get that if you fill out the survey, which will be coming out sometime today. So when you get your survey, please do us a favor. It helps us improve things as we go forward. Put every comments and the like in there. And I really, really appreciate, again, Fern helping out with the chapter education. And we will be doing additional lunch and learns and meetups moving forward. So please keep an eye out for those on your favorite social media as well as the websites. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. We hope that this was informational and educational to you. And please, by all means, if you have ideas moving forward, bring them up. We'd love to hear from you, and we want to be able to keep this type of education going. So Donnie, Mark, Jim, again, really appreciate you being here and participating. It's been wonderful to hear from you, and thank you for your time and education.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russ. Thanks, everyone. Be well.
Bye.